Is your fantasy baseball team already toast? Well, don't worry, because Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy baseball. There's many fun ways to play, including daily drafts where you can draft your squad to help you win some cash, or daily pick'ems where you can choose your favorite players and predict whether they go higher or lower on certain stats. Getting started is simple. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog Fantasy app and click the link in the description down below. When signing up, make sure to use my code Hyde to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Have fun, and as always, play responsibly. Now, let's get to the video. Okay, here we go. The deadline is come and gone, so I'm going to give a grade for each team. Let's start off with the Arizona Diamondbacks. They definitely needed to do something. They've been ice cold lately, 3-7 in their last 10. They've now fallen out of a wild card spot, a game out as of right now. But overall, I like the deadline that they had. They added a variety of players, most notably Paul Sewald. He's going to go right there at the back end of the bullpen. He's one of the better closers in the game. And you did have to trade away Andrew Chafin, but you did bring in Peter Strzelecki. It was a 1-for-1 swap, but with Strzelecki, he's going to be under control until 2029, while Chafin, who's now on the Brewers, he could be a free agent after this season, so I did like that. You also added Jace Peterson. Not an amazing season with the bat, but that's going to be a lefty bat there. He's going to give you some good defense at third base as well. And you also added Tommy Pham. This is a guy where the advanced numbers look really good for him. He's going to hit lefties really well. Overall, I like the deadline that the Diamondbacks had. To me, they made a lot of moves. They were productive. I'm going to give them an A. On to the Atlanta Braves, and the Braves really didn't need to do all that much. This is a very good team this year, but they did make a few moves to bolster the roster for the stretch run. Taking a look here, they added a few relievers: Pierce Johnson, Taylor Hearn, Brad Hand. That'll be good to have another lefty in that bullpen. You also added Nicky Lopez. Not really a great bat like he was a couple of years ago, but he's going to have versatility. He'll give you some good defense. So overall, like I said, the Braves really didn't need to do all that much. In the end, I'll just go with a B. Moving on to the Baltimore Orioles, the big move they made was adding Jack Flaherty from the St. Louis Cardinals. But don't forget, they made a couple other moves. They added Fujinami from the A's a little while ago. And they also made a minor move, adding a pitching prospect in Logan Reinhart from the Mariners. With Jack Flaherty, I think it's fine. A 4.43 ERA, a 4.22 FIP. He's going to get more ground balls. Very similar to Kyle Gibson. Very similar to Kyle Bradish. He's 23rd overall in ground ball percentage. The one problem I have with this is that the Orioles infield has not performed very well this year. -10 in outs above average. So it's going to be very similar to what they already have. I mean, I think it's good to bolster the rotation. It doesn't hurt by any means, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more here. Go after a guy that can do something a little more differently. Someone like Dylan Cease who can rack up some more strikeouts. That would have cost some more prospects. I don't know if they really wanted to shell out the prospects. I know they're trying to build a sustained contender. So is that something they really want to do right now? Doesn't seem like it to me. So they went with a minor move, adding a rental and Jack Flaherty. But I feel like you could have done a little better with this one. That's just my own personal opinion. But I can't hate the move by any means. They went out there. They got something done. I can appreciate that. I'll give them a B, but I feel like they could have done better here. Moving on to my Red Sox, and man, oh man, Red Sox fans feel a certain type of way about this one. As of right now, they're a game and a half out in the wild card race. They needed to add some starting pitching to a rotation that has been decimated by injuries this year, but in the end, all they did was add Luis Urias, a guy whose bat has completely disappeared. Now, if they can get him back on track, I think that'll be great, but they really needed some pitching. They did also trade Kike Hernandez back to the Dodgers. They got a couple of decent pitching prospects in return. I was okay with that, but they needed to add some starting pitching here. This rotation has been running on Brian Bayo, James Paxton, and Cutter Crawford. Nick Pivetta did just rejoin the rotation from the bullpen. He was doing well there, so let's see if he can keep it going here. But they needed something for this rotation, and they didn't get it done. But I can also appreciate the fact that they didn't shell out any prospects, and they stayed disciplined, and they stayed committed to the long-term goal of building a sustained winner every single year. I'm tired of doing the yo-yo thing where they're a good team one year and they're a bad team the next. They want to build a sustained winner, and to have a sustained winner, you have to have a deep farm system. And I like that they didn't shell out any prospects and they just stuck to the plan. You know, with the Red Sox, remember, Dave Dombrowski sent out a lot of prospects not too long ago to help them win a World Series in 2018. But after that, the farm system was completely decimated. But now it's looking really good. It's 5th on Fangraphs as of right now in the farm system rankings. So I like that they stayed committed and they stuck to the plan. Remember, a deep farm system is crucial for an organization because not only are those players going to come up and help you at the major league level, but they also give you assets to use in trades to help you get that final piece to try and win a World Series. The Red Sox are not quite there yet, in my opinion. So I'm glad that they stuck to the plan and they stayed disciplined. However, it is a little disappointing that they didn't add something for the rotation. They did add a couple of decent prospects, with Kike Hernandez, but it feels like they could have done a little bit more. So I'm not going to give them an F completely. I'll go with a D. On to the Chicago Cubs, and it seemed like they were going to be sellers not too long ago, but they got red hot and they're right back in the race. 4 out in the Central, 3.5 out in the wild card race, and instead of selling guys like Cody Bellinger and Marcus Stroman, they ended up adding someone in Jeimer Candelario, added a piece for the bullpen and Jose Cuas. I did like these moves for the Chicago Cubs, but I wonder if they could have just done more. If you were going to commit to buying, I would have liked to have seen them maybe add another starting pitcher. To me, I feel like they could have done more here. I did like the moves overall, but I do wonder if the Cubs are going to look back on this and maybe regret not trading Bellinger, not trading Stroman, and getting, pieces for the future. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Again, I like the move in Candelario. I like that they added a bullpen piece. I think they needed that, but I feel like they could have done a little bit more if they were going to commit to buying. So I'll give them a B. Moving on to the Chicago White Sox. And speaking of sellers, that's exactly what the White Sox were this year. And man, they got back a lot of prospects. Taking a look here, they sent Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez to the Angels. They got back Edgar Quero and Kai Bush, the 2 and the 4 in the Angels system. They sent Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly to the Dodgers, and they got back Nick Nastrini, a higher pitching prospect in the Dodgers system, as well as Jordan Leisure and Trace Thompson here. They sent Kendall Graveman to the Astros. They got back Corey Lee, a catching prospect. They sent Keenan Middleton to the Yankees at the deadline, and they got back a decent pitching prospect in Juan Sorella. His guys got pretty decent numbers in the minor leagues. They also got Luis Patino, a former top pitching prospect in the game. Let's see if they can get him back on track. And they traded away a power bat in Jake Berger. The batting average, the on base isn't very good with him, but the slugging is high, the power is high. He's got 25 home runs this year. And they got back a decent pitching prospect in Jake Eater, who is coming off of Tommy John, but he was a higher pitching prospect for the Marlins. So overall, I think the White Sox did exactly what they needed to do, and they hung on to their core players, Luis Robert Jr., Dylan Cease as well. So the White Sox, to me, they still have a core group of players. So if they were to go in the offseason and add a few pieces, this team could look pretty good next year, and they replenished the farm system. So for me, I think the White Sox did exactly what they needed to do. I'm going to give them an A. On to the Cincinnati Reds. I was hoping they were going to add a good starting pitcher for this rotation that's been without Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. They've had a rotation lately of Andrew Abbott, Graham Ashcraft, Ben Lively, Brandon Williamson, and Luke Weaver. That's been decent, but I feel like they could have had an upgrade in this rotation. They will get Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo back eventually. I think it just would have been nice for them to add something here. They did add Sam Mull, a cost-controlled reliever for the bullpen, so that'll definitely help shore things up there. But I think they could have just done a little bit more. I do like the addition of Sam Mull. I think that was a pretty low-key move. The advanced numbers look a little better than the ERA with him. So for me, honestly, with the Reds, and I could also appreciate the fact that, like my Red Sox, that they've been trying to build this farm system back up. So I can appreciate that they didn't, shell out any prospects to just get like a rental. So I can appreciate that. I just think they could have done a little bit more. But I do like them adding a Sam Mull. So I'll give them a C. On to the Cleveland Guardians, and they had an interesting deadline where they did both buying and selling. If we take a look at where they are in the standings as of right now, they're 2 back in the Central Division, so they could still win this thing. But the Guardians took an approach where they brought back some veteran pieces that can still help them contend, but also brought in some prospects that can help them for the future. So taking a look at the moves overall, they sent away Ahmed Rosario, Aaron Savali, and Josh Bell, and they got back some pieces here, both veterans and prospects. Gene Segura and Noah Syndergaard will help them now, and then you got Kyle Manzardo and Khalil Watson for the future. I like these prospects that they added. Kyle Manzardo and Khalil Watson not having great years in the minor leagues, but Kyle Manzardo is a highly projectable bat that scouts love, and Khalil Watson was a first-round pick not too long ago by the Marlins. So I think these pieces could be really good for them down the road if they can get them back on track. And they added a couple of veteran guys that could help them this year. I know, Gene Segura, Syndergaard, they're not having great years, but they could help them. So we'll see what happens there. But in the end, I love the addition of Kyle Manzardo and Khalil Watson. These are pretty decent prospects overall, despite not having great numbers. So for me personally, I'm going to go with a B for the Guardians. On to the Colorado Rockies. They had a simple deadline where they sold off a few pieces and got back some prospects. They traded away C.J. Cron and Randall Grichuk, most notably to the Angels, and Brad Hand and Pierce Johnson to the Braves. So taking a look at these prospects they got back. So you got Jake Madden, Mason Albright, Victor Vodnik. So these guys are going to, fill out the bottom half of your top 30. So never hurts to replenish the farm. They didn't do anything, crazy, like getting like a, higher prospect back. They got some prospect depth, so I can appreciate that. I'll give them a C. On to the Detroit Tigers, and the big story was them not trading Eduardo Rodriguez. They had a deal set up with the LA Dodgers, but he decided to invoke his no-trade clause because he wanted to stay closer with his family, which I can completely respect. But I do find it disappointing that they couldn't get a deal done with another team, especially with the fact that he has the opt-out clause for the offseason. And, to me, the fact that they might not even get anything for him when they had a deal set up, so you could have gotten a deal done with another team and you couldn't get any prospects back, I think that's pretty disappointing if you ask me. However, they did trade Michael Lorenzen to the Phillies, and they did get it back a pretty decent prospect in Hao Yu Lee, who is now their number 6 prospect in their system. So I can appreciate that. I just feel like they fell short a little bit this deadline. For me, they did get back a really good prospect in Lee, so I'll give them a B, but they definitely could have been an A. On to the Houston Astros, and what else is there to say? Bringing back an old friend in Justin Verlander. You also brought back Kendall Graveman for the bullpen a couple of days ago, but overall, really like these moves. You had to give up a couple of good prospects in Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford to get Verlander back, but if you want to defend your championship, you got to go for it. Really like this move overall. When you look at the rotation, I think they really needed a starting pitcher in this rotation, and who better than Justin Verlander, 2-time Cy Young winner with the Astros. So taking a look here, Verlander, Valdez just threw a no-hitter last night, so they're obviously feeling really good. Javier and Brown, along with JP France too. That's really good for the postseason, really good for down the stretch, and they are neck and neck with the Rangers for first place here. They are gaining. So overall, absolutely love this move for the Astros. I'm going with an A. On to the Kansas City Royals, and they had a low-key decent deadline. If we take a look at the trades they made, Scott Barlow to the Padres brought back Henry Williams, who is now their number 9 prospect, and they also sent Ryan Yarbrough to the Dodgers in exchange for Devin Mann and Derlin Figueroa. Devin Mann is their number 26 prospect, but he's having a really good year down in the minor leagues at AAA. He's hitting .307 with a .402 on base, a .541 slugging. He's got 14 homers in there as well. Not bad if you ask me. Don't forget, they also traded away Aroldis Chapman to the Rangers back in June. They did get Cole Reagans back. He used to be a higher pitching prospect. He's still trying to find his way in the minor leagues, but he is making a spot start for the Royals soon. So in the end for the Royals, not bad. They got back a couple of decent prospects. Nothing flashy by any means. Salvador Perez's name came up in the rumors, but that guy's contract is so underwater. They weren't going to get anything for him unless they paid down a lot of his contract. So, for the Royals, nothing flashy, but they made a couple of decent moves, a couple of decent prospects. I'll give them a C. I think you could even maybe go B. Let's see how the prospects turn out. I'll go with a C. On to the LA Angels, and it wasn't too long ago when we were wondering where was Shohei Ohtani going to get traded to, but then they started playing better, and they said they were going to keep Shohei Ohtani instead, and they were going to buy, and boy, oh boy, did they buy. They ended up adding Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, C.J. Cron, Randall Grichuk. They're putting their best foot forward, trying to make the playoffs, trying to do everything they can to keep Ohtani in the offseason. I dig it. To me, you got to give the Angels an A. On to the LA Dodgers, and earlier we were talking about Eduardo Rodriguez, and the Dodgers had a deal done for him, but he didn't want to waive the no-trade clause, so in the end, the Dodgers ended up with just Lance Lynn as their starting pitcher. They also brought in Joe Kelly. I thought that was good for the bullpen. They did bring in Ryan Yarbrough as well for some depth. So for the Dodgers, we're used to them, making the splashy trades, but in the end, they just played it safe here. Didn't do anything drastic, but they did make some moves. Let's see what they do in the offseason with Shohei Ohtani. I definitely think they got a shot, but for here in the trade deadline, I'll give them a B. On to the Miami Marlins, and man, they had a busy trade season. Go back to July 26th. They made a swap with Dylan Floro and Jorge Lopez, a change of scenery kind of move. They got David Robertson to be their closer a few days ago, and then yesterday was a really busy day. The most notable move, adding Jake Berger, a power bat, 25 home runs as of right now. Not really going to be much for the average and the on base, but a lot of power with him, and I think the Marlins could use something like that. They also got a veteran bat in Josh Bell. I don't see any harm in that. You basically swapped him with Gene Segura. You also gave up Khalil Watson, too. He wasn't really doing much in the minor leagues for you anyway. But to me, Josh Bell, I'm okay with that move. Let's see if he can get it going with the Marlins. But I actually also really like the move for Ryan Weathers. Now, Ryan Weathers was the number 6 prospect back in 2021 for the Padres. Now, not great numbers with Ryan Weathers, but the Marlins have a knack for getting guys back on track. So I think the Marlins had a really productive trade season here. They made a lot of good moves. They're right there in the race, for a wild card spot. They're a game out in the wild card race as of right now. The Marlins went out there and they made some productive moves. I enjoy that. I'm going to give them an A. On to the Milwaukee Brewers. They made a few moves here going back to July 27th. They made a move for Carlos Santana. Then they brought in Mark Canha. They also brought in Andrew Chafin for the bullpen. I always love Andrew Chafin. So they went out there. They made some moves. They needed to make some moves. They're right in the race for that Central Division. For me, overall, I'll go with a B. On to the New York Mets, and the Mets are the talk of the town right now. Go back to the last couple of off seasons. They've been spending money left and right, signing Max Scherzer, signing Justin Verlander, and now they have traded them away. Max Scherzer to the Rangers and Justin Verlander to the Astros. But I'll be honest with you, I actually really like what the Mets did. They got back a ton of good prospects. Let's go through it. The most notable prospects they got back, you got Luis Angel Acuna for Max Scherzer, as well as Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford from the Astros. I absolutely love this for the Mets. I mean, my goodness. Look at their farm system now. You got Acuna at number 2, Gilbert at number 4, Clifford at number 6. I mean, my goodness. You even got back Jeremy Rodriguez in a deal yesterday for Tommy Pham with the Diamondbacks, a very young shortstop. At Fangraphs, they have him at the number 29 spot for the Mets' top prospects. So they got back here a ton of prospects. And to me, if the Mets are not going to be competing, and if they're going to be out of it, then they needed to make these kind of moves. And they brought back good prospects. And yeah, they had to shell out a lot of money for Verlander and Scherzer to be able to get those prospects. But you know what? I can appreciate the Mets. They went out there. They spent the money in the off seasons to try and compete. It didn't work out. So, hey, they are owning up to their mistakes here. They're paying the money to bring in good prospects for the future. I don't see how you can hate on that, to be honest with you. I really like what they did. I'm going to give the Mets an A. On to the New York Yankees. They really needed to add a bat. This offense has been struggling this year, but instead they added a reliever in Keenan Middleton. Now, I think that'll be a good upgrade for their bullpen. I was hoping my Red Sox would go after Keenan Middleton, but in the end, the Yankees, they needed some offense. They couldn't get a deal done anywhere for a bat. I do appreciate that they went out there and made a move by the deadline, so I'll give them credit for that, but man, they did need some offense. In the end, it felt like an underwhelming trade deadline for the Yankees. They could have done more, in my opinion. I don't know. But for me, I'm going to go with a C. On to the Oakland A's, and they really didn't do all that much. That's just how bad of a season it's been for the Oakland A's. You couldn't even have a whole lot of fun at the trade deadline bringing in a whole ton of prospects. Now, you brought in Joe Boyle. That guy, he's got a lot of upside. He is your number 22 prospect as of right now. He's got a big fastball, so maybe you could see him down the road. But in the end, just kind of a boring deadline for the Oakland A's. You traded away Jace Peterson to the Diamondbacks. You brought back a couple of pieces. I don't know. Just feels just so lackluster for the A's. Just not a whole lot going on. I'll go with a D. I was hoping they could do a little bit more. On to the Philadelphia Phillies. I thought they could have done a little bit more, but overall, a pretty solid deadline for the Phillies, most notably bringing in Michael Lorenzen. This guy is going to be some depth for you in this rotation. Now you got a lot of arms here. You got Wheeler, Nola, Walker, Suarez, Sanchez, and now Lorenzen. Lorenzen could even go to the bullpen if you needed him to go there. They also brought in Rodolfo Castro. This is a guy, he's got some power, he's got some speed. Hasn't really amounted to too much yet, but they gave up Bailey Falter. Really, Bailey Falter is more just a depth guy at this point who has a lot of control. So I'd say that was a pretty even swap. In the end for the Phillies, I feel like they could have just done more. I think they could have used another right-handed bat like a Tommy Pham or an Adam Duvall. I thought Adam Duvall was going to be going to the Phillies. I was seeing those reports all week. So I don't know. For the Phillies, I'll give them credit. They got Lorenzen. You got a decent piece in Castro who is young. I feel like you could probably go C+ for the Phillies. I'm glad they added some picks. pitching. It never hurts to add some pitching for a playoff contender. I'll go B. On to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and they had a pretty busy trade season. They sent Carlos Santana to the Brewers, Rich Hill and Ji-Man Choi to the Padres, Rodolfo Castro to the Phillies, Austin Hedges to the Rangers, and they got back a lot of prospect depth, some international signing money as well. Bailey Falter, a young starting pitcher with a lot of control. I think that's overall pretty decent for the Pittsburgh Pirates. For them, I think that's solid. I'm going to give them a B. I think it could have been an A if they had traded away maybe David Bednar, Mitch Keller. They could have gotten back some serious prospects for those guys, but I appreciate them hanging on to those guys. The Pirates, they're going to try and compete here in the next couple of years. Those guys have a lot of control. So for the Pirates, for this trade season, I'm going to give them a B. Moving on to the San Diego Padres, and people were wondering, were they going to sell? Were they going to buy? But in the end, they decided to buy. They think they can compete for a playoff spot. They do have a good team, so let's see what they can do the rest of the way. They didn't make any crazy moves, no splashy moves. They decided to just make some low-key kind of moves. Offensively, they added Ji-Man Choi and Garrett Cooper, a lefty and a righty, so let's see if maybe that can help the lineup out a little bit, different matchups there. And then on the pitching side of things, you brought in Rich Hill for the back end of the rotation, and Scott Barlow, another arm for the bullpen. I think overall, these are pretty decent moves to the Padres. Let's see if that can be enough to push them into a playoff spot. I'll give them a B. On to the Seattle Mariners, and they had a weird deadline where they traded away a big piece in their closer, Paul Sewald, and in return, they got utility man Josh Rojas, as well as a couple of prospects in Ryan Bliss and Dominic Canzone. They made a minor move for Edward Brizardo, sending back Logan Reinhart to the Orioles, but in the end, not a very eventful deadline for the Mariners, where it felt like they needed a spark, and they didn't really bring in that spark, and instead they just traded away a big piece. Now, you got Munoz, who's going to step into the closer role. I don't know, just for the Mariners, I thought maybe they were going to add something, try and improve their chances for the second half of the season. But in the end, I do like the pieces that they got back in Canzone and Ryan Bliss. If we take a look at where they are on pipeline, number 13 and 14 now in their system, but they're having really good seasons down in the minor leagues. Maybe Rojas can give them a bit of a boost here, in the lineup. They DFA'd Colton Wong, so let's see if Rojas can give them some kind of a spark. I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to give you, but the Mariners, they're pretty much saying, you know what? We have the talent here. They should be able to compete. Let's see if we can get a wild card spot. But I do like that they added a couple of pieces, but it just feels underwhelming for the Mariners considering the expectations they had for this year. So overall, I do like, the prospects in Manzone and Bliss, but I just feel like they could have done something for this team. So in the end, I'll give them a D. On to the San Francisco Giants, and I think they had a really underwhelming deadline. They needed an outfield bat, and the best they could do was A.J. Pollock. They could have also added something for this rotation, and they didn't go out and get anything. Overall, I think this was a terrible deadline for the Giants. I'm going to go with an F. On to the St. Louis Cardinals, and they did a lot of selling, trading away guys like Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty, Jordan Hicks, Paul DeYoung, and you brought back a lot of prospects to help freshen up this farm system. Taking a look at those prospects, you now have your number 4 in Tekoa Roby, your number 6 in Sem Robers, your number 8, a good bat in Thomas Segesi. Go down a little further here. Now you have your number 22 in Adam Kloffenstein, number 23 in Zach Showalter, number 26 in Drew Rom. This is exactly what the Cardinals needed to do. You needed to go out and sell, bring back pieces, and you still have a pretty decent team for next year. Go into the offseason, go get some free agents, and I think the Cardinals could still be a good team next year. Now you have a lot of prospects to work with in your organization and a lot of pitching prospects. That's what I like about what the Cardinals did. Overall, like the Mets, I'm going to give them an A. On to the Texas Rangers. Earlier this season, they lost Jacob deGrom. Most recently, Nathan Eovaldi went on the IL. No problem. They went out there and they made some moves, bringing in Max Scherzer and Jordan Montgomery for the rotation. Max Scherzer is not having his best season, but he is now with his old pitching coach in Mike Maddox. Let's see if he can get him back on the right track. You also got Jordan Montgomery as well. That's going to bring more stability to this rotation. Nathan Eovaldi, he'll come back eventually. That's a pretty good 1-2-3 punch with Nathan Eovaldi, Max Scherzer, and Jordan Montgomery. That's going to be very good for the playoffs. Then they also got John Gray and Perez and Heaney and Dunning there, so they got a lot of depth now for this rotation. Also, they brought in Austin Hedges. That's going to be a good defensive guy for the Rangers as well. He works well with pitchers. I really like that addition. And they brought in Chris Stratton for the bullpen too with Jordan Montgomery. Overall, a great deadline for the Rangers. I love how aggressive they are. Very solid. That's going to be an A for me. On to the Minnesota Twins, and not much here for the Twins. I thought a right-handed bat like Tommy Pham would have been perfect for them, but in the end, all they ended up doing was making a swap of Dylan Floro and Jorge Lopez and a change of scenery kind of move. You know, you had a guy like a Kenta Maeda that maybe could have brought something in. In the end, I think for the Twins, this is very disappointing. You are in first place in your division right now. To me, I think you should have been adding to this team. Sure, some of these guys like Carlos Correa, they're having down seasons. Byron Buxton could be doing more, so they're looking for this team to improve from within. I just feel like you could have done something here for the Twins. I don't know. I'm going to go with an F. On to the Toronto Blue Jays, and they had a pretty decent trade season, most notably going after bullpen guys, and boy, did they get it in Jordan Hicks and Genesis Cabrera a little while back. That's a lot of velocity coming into this bullpen. I love me some high velocity guys for the bullpen. Then you're going to get Jordan Romano back eventually. This bullpen could end up being really good for the Blue Jays. They also added Paul DeJong. With Bo Bichette, he's got some issues with the knee right now. It looks like he's not going to be missing a ton of time. So Paul DeJong, that's a nice add for them. Going to give them a good defensive shortstop, a little pop from the right side. I think that was a really solid insurance add for them. In the end, for the Blue Jays, I think this is a really solid deadline for them. I think you could go with a B, go with an A. For me, I'm going to go with an A for the Blue Jays because I think they needed to add some guys for this bullpen. They did just that. I really like what they did. On to the Washington Nationals, and the most notable move they made was sending Jeimer Candelario to the Cubs, and in return, they got a pitching prospect in DJ Hurst and a shortstop prospect in Kevin Made. Right now, they're going to be the 16 and 17 prospects in their system. I think that's pretty decent, but I feel like you could have done more here. You had Lane Thomas, I feel like could have gotten you back some more prospects. Kyle Finnegan, I'm really surprised didn't get moved. I feel like you could have gotten something for him. So in the end, for the Nationals, I like the move for Candelario, but I think you could have just done more here. So, I'll give him credit for making that move, but I feel like you fell short a little bit. I'll go with a C. And last but not least, we have the Tampa Bay Rays. The most notable move they made was adding Aaron Savali for the rotation. It did come at the expense of a good hitting prospect in Kyle Manzardo, but I love the addition of Savali here for the rotation. You got McClanahan, you got Glasnow, you got Eflin, and now Savali. There's a lot of stability there. I think that's going to be really good for the stretch run. I think that's really good for the postseason as well. Love that move overall. Sure, you had to give up Manzardo, but he wasn't having a great season down in the minor leagues. He could end up being a really good hitter down the road, but I think for now, the Rays, they have a team that is capable of going far in the postseason. I think adding a pitcher that's under control for a couple of seasons in Savali, I think that's really solid overall. Could they have done a bit more? Maybe add a little bit more offense, maybe something for the bullpen. Sure, but I just love that they added a cost-controlled starting pitcher that's going to help you now and in the next couple of years as well. Sure, I think they could have added a little bit more, so I'll go with a B for the Rays. I think you could go B+, maybe an A, but I'll go with a B. So those are my grades overall. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Do you think any of these teams should be up higher, lower? Let me know what you think. But on the way out, if you can, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.